Hi, welcome to the last of the series on pivot table custom calculations. The previous videos, we've shown you how you can add standard calculations to the pivot table. We also then went on to explain a little bit about custom calculations. And today we're going to get into deeper into what you can do with these custom calculations. We reviewed basically a quick review that each custom formula is evaluated at each dimension hierarchy at its lowest level, but also when it's collapsed at the summary levels as well as the grand total. So you must be aware of the level that you're dealing with to get to the right calculation. The second thing we also discussed is that the results of these formulas can be text and numbers. So it's not always just about numbers. You could also return an indicator, high, medium, low. Because again, we're using standard JavaScript, which are executed by all browsers. So again, the power is on your side to build as easy or as complex formulas as you want, taking two things into consideration. The first one, that it is JavaScript, so it may return unexpected results. Things such as floating point math is handled differently in JavaScript than, for example, in spreadsheets, where the issue is hidden for you by applying a rounding automatically. So, for example, 200.3 times 3 in JavaScript returns 600.9000001, and this is kind of related to how basically the binary system and decimal floating point numbers work in computers. So you need additional functions, potentially such as to fix and round, if you want to round things during calculation. If not, you should not worry about it, because you could use our formatting feature on the format of the pivot table to format a specific column in currency, in number, with however many decimals you want, and we will then fix this for you, just like, again, spreadsheets and other applications fix it for you. The second thing that you need to be aware of is that, yes, you can write any JavaScript function you want. That does not mean that you should write any JavaScript function that you want. Again, depending on the volume of your pivot table and the browser capability and the computer's capability on the user side, you may not want to do very crazy things on it. So always keep that in mind. Because again, we are using JavaScript, you can use most JS syntax, right? You can use logical if statements. You can use the math library to take the square root or to generate a random number. There's a lot of resources if you just search for JavaScript language math. For example, you'll get to a page filled with math functions that you could use. You could also comment your functions if, again, you need a little bit of documentation to try to understand what is this formula about. You can do the forward slash, double forward slash, and then put in a comment, and then put in your formula below. Again, a lot of power on this. We again hide the power behind the simplicity of ClickData, but again, this is very useful when you're writing more advanced formulas. The last thing we ended our last video with was how to reference other values at the same dimension level hierarchy, at the lowest level. We can reference it simply by saying cell.value and then putting the column name of the value that we're trying. If you only have one, or if you have multiple, in the cases of the one below where you had sales and quantity, and again, using that example here, you had sales and you had quantity, and you want to divide this by this at every level, again, you would use that formula here to basically do that. And the last piece is what we're going to do today. Today we're going to talk about, again, a quick review of the basics above, which we just did, and now we're going to use different cells in our calculation. So it's going to get a little bit potentially more interesting, where we actually look at practical examples of how you can not only divide sales by quantity, but potentially divide sales of Canada divided by the grand total, or a comparison between countries, or potentially another adjacent dimension, so from this quarter to that quarter, or from this cell to the grand total, for example. So again, a lot of different possibilities you may want to do this. Cumulative sums, kind of different types of differences in prices or quantities or growth. Again, this is where we're going to get into it. So let's get to it. So to finish this tutorial on the custom calculations in the pivot table, I'd like to walk through an actual very specific example that's been asked by a customer where they wanted to show percentages on the total for quantity for the low level or the summary levels, but not but the actual quantities at each inner level. So to do that, we need to differentiate whether the cell calculation is taking place at the lowest level, what is called index 0, versus index 1 or index 2. And again, we're doing this on the row basis, but you can do this as well on a column basis. The example would be the similar formula, except we would be doing by column instead of row. So to do that, I always start with my try catch to make sure that if I have any errors, I get some data back and the pivot table works. And what I'm going to do is I'm going to start with, okay, if my cell, the field, which is that property that we discussed just previously, at the index level, index is not at 0, okay, or is at 0, whichever way you prefer to do it. So if I'm at the very highest level, which is counterintuitive, being 0 being the lowest number, but 0 is the highest level, then I would like to do something else. I'd like to do something else, which is show some numbers. So if I'm any other level, I would like to show the quantity unchanged. But if I'm at this level, what I'd like to do is show a percentage of that quantity over the total. So to do that, again, I pick the cell valid quantity, but I'm going to divide it by, whoops, a grand total. I'm doing this by rows. This is where you would change it if you were doing, for example, across the column side. And what I'm going to do is pick the value quantity, so the grand total quantity, and I'm going to multiply that by 100 to give me a percentage. So let's test it out. All right, so now if I expand, I have quantities here, okay? Maybe I'll rename this as the second quantity column that I'm going to display. I have quantities here and I have percentages here. This should add up to 100%, which is the total of 282. Now, I want to make this a little bit more friendly. I'm going to put brackets around my entire calculation. And if you remember one of our videos where we do a fixed percentage calculation, so we cut the number of decimals to 2. And in addition to that, I'm going to do my own custom formatting by putting a percentage sign at the end. So let's see what this looks like. So I have my percentage here, and I have my numbers here. So now all I have to do, if I don't want this, I'll just go back here and I'll hide my quantity column. And now I just have a quantity where it shows percentage. And if I expand, I have the actual quantities. So this is how we can use those custom if statements all together with grand totals and other things. Obviously, this is a simple calculation. You can do a lot more complex things with this. Again, the power of our pivot table and custom calculation is there for you to do that. And if you have any questions, as always, call our support. Thank you.